A wonderful good evening to all, and welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Monday night, beginning of the last week of the month of January, the 24th, 2022. The Joe and Joe Show tonight is brought to you by, I don't even know where that's coming from. Sorry, folks. Uh, Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, your superstore for rock salt, sand, pellet-dough, mag, ice pellets and flakes, and anything else you need to make sure your home or your business is in tip-top shape, nice and clean for this winter season. You want to keep things safe, and that's Omni on the outside. There are your snow blowers if you need one. There are your spreaders, your mag ice pellets and flakes, and your pellet-dough, and tons of rock salt at the lowest prices anywhere in the tri-state area. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Serving New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Long Island, and any place else. If you want to come up from Delaware or from Pennsylvania, by all means, please do. The phone number is 631-756-1125. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
right. Not .net,
Yes.
not .us.
No,
.com.
I did not say that.
Okay, Mr. Rayo, it's Monday, and I said late last week that if come Monday, the storm was still somewhere up there on the map and looked potentially menacing, I would get interested. So I will officially say that I am now interested. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to just tell you in my mind, I'm going to just tell everybody watching tonight and listening tonight, okay? Save yourself the emotional wrecks, the emotional hand wringing, the wailing and gnashing of teeth, only to be followed by 6 hours later by jumping for joy, only to be followed by 6 hours later of wailing of gnashing of teeth, is that we're not going to know anything with clarity until we know exactly what kind of upper air structure we are dealing with. And we talked about this yesterday. We talked about this late last week. If the trough is progressive, this is going to not be a problem. Or if it is a problem, it's not going to be a big problem. If the trough is north-south, if it's northeast-southwest or negative tilt, go back to yesterday's show or go look at the video on YouTube with the broom analogy, then the snow lovers will be very happy. But we're not going to know this probably not till Wednesday, in my view.
Did you read my Facebook commentary? First of all, before anything else, I know we love Omni True Value. They've been with us almost since the beginning, but we need to move on to you and I and weather. And so I think that the slide for True Value should be taken down for the moment.
Oh. No, it is down, Joe. Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry. Whoa. My fault. I was so anxious to just have a conversation with you that I forgot to put us up full screen. And then I had the Zoom full screen up, so I was fooled. Well, look, they got extra press there, so at least it reminds everybody that if we do get snow this Friday night and Saturday, that Omni is there for you.
Absolutely. Now, I will invoke what I call Asimov's law. Again, can entropy be reversed? You ask a computer, and the computer will give you the same answer as if you ask it if we're going to get a big storm 5 days in advance. There is, as of yet, insufficient data for a meaningful, underscore that word, meaningful answer. In other words, sure, go ahead, run your computer models out 5, 6, 10, 12, 15 days, but anything more than, let's say, 3 or 4 days, and you're playing, with trouble or playing with fire. So I've seen the models, Joe, and unlike last week, where last Monday, only the European was standing and yelling, "Hey, there's going to be a big storm next Saturday. There's going to be a big storm." And all the others, like, now the Canadian model, the GFS, the European, they're all on the same page. Big storm possible for Friday night and Saturday, but it's still many, many days out. And let me also point out, even though I don't put any credence on it, for whatever reason, the 18Z GFS says goodbye
Well,
out to sea. So
and
much different from the
right.
12Z.
And I mean, to be fair, I will, put that asterisk that you put on it. I'll put it on for you because you didn't do so. That you're not a huge fan of the off-hour runs. I'm not. I'm a little bit. I look at them. I tend to find some value in them. But all the 18Z model run really told me was something I already, something I knew at earlier today, and I knew yesterday, and I knew on Saturday and before that, and that we're still in that sort of dancing around period, I guess if you want to call it that. Uh, the uh, uh, the main difference, it's one difference, and it's the structure of the trough. If you look, when you look at the models from earlier today, the main cycle run at the main 12Z cycle run, all the models had a very, very dynamic looking upper air, especially the Canadian and the European. And the GFS did too, but it was just a little different, and it was probably going to get to the same place. So I kind of thought that we're still going to see the models are still trying to figure out, is that trough going to dig far enough west and then get really sharp and then start to lift right up along the coast, or is it going to be flatter for a longer period of time and then start to lift after it's already past us? And in which case, this as you said would probably be either a lesser of event or a low end event or a non-event. And the 18Z run certainly did not give me an unequivocal answer one way or another. One thing I will say, I'm going to bring this up because I know I joke about the Canadian model, okay? And today it was funny because it reminded me of what happened many years ago. The Canadian model was very late today, and I didn't find out till late this afternoon that it was because they were having some data issues. They finally got the run out there, but it reminded me back, probably going back before 2010. There was right around Christmas time, right before Christmas time, they had a big model crash. The Canadian didn't run for several days, and then we get a notification that something went wrong with their computer, and that the people who fixed the computers were on vacation until the end of January, and they wouldn't be back, and they wouldn't be back. So it was down for like a month. They just shut the place. They shut the whole weather service basically down for a month. So it just kind of reminded me of that. But no, this time they got it. They got it fixed a whole lot sooner. Just an old funny story. And also the other thing about the Canadian model is the last time that I recall the Canadian model really hitting a grand slam was in the Boxing Day storm in 2009 or 2010. I always forget which year it was. But it it hasn't hit one since. And I will say that it was the Canadian model was the first one to go left, and then all the other models kind of came left in that direction. And today's run of the Canadian was very consistent with last night's run. It was almost line by line consistent. So maybe it's after what is it now, 12 or 13 years, it's about to hit another grand slam with what it depicts, and we'll show you what the model has when we get to the maps.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying is what I'm saying, and that is it's interesting. Certainly, it looks interesting, and the prospects hold for something possibly to happen toward the end of the week. But until Wednesday or Thursday, nobody can say for sure.
Right, and also, I also want to bring up one other thing. Before I do that, I just want to tell everybody we have a poll tonight, and the poll is The risk for an East Coast storm Friday night into Saturday is growing. Who gets the most snow? And I put four cities down: New York City, Hartford, Scranton, and Boston. So far, we have 100. New York City is at 32%. Boston right behind at 31%. Hartford is at 24%, and Scranton is at 13%. So our chartboard forecasters have had their say, and we'll check a little later to see what the poll has to, how that's going. And also, just to remind everybody, you can download, and the link is up on the chat board. It's pinned to the top of the chat. You can download my meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, which is absolutely free on Google Play or on the App Store. Just search my name, and you should find it. And among other things that it has, including your local weather, your local forecast, no matter where you are, it also has my weather updates on there, and it has every single National Weather Service snow forecast map from Maine all the way down to Georgia, and it also has the ice forecast maps for much of the area surrounding New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and points further south down into Maryland and Delaware. And I might even have one other map up there from another spot, but I can't recall. But they're all there. It's all free. Just download the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, and you can find that on Google Play or on the App Store. In fact, if you go to the link that's on the chat board that's pinned on the chat, it'll take you to the Google Play and App Store links, and you'll head right there. Forza Jersey hitting super chat, the tip jar tonight, praying to the snow gods for a good snow dumping. Well, can't tell you that now, whether that's going to happen or not. And Joe, this is the other thing I wanted to bring up, because a few people are, everybody looks at the snow maps, and they're kind of fun to look at. But remember, the snow maps just basically, they just match what the precipitation, whatever algorithm they use to figure it all out, but they match the precipitation and the precipitation types that are shown by the models. So as the models change, the snow maps are going to change. I think that's pretty logical to remember. One is certainly connected with the other. But from a forecasting standpoint, particularly right now, they are really just useless. I mean, I could figure out how much snow without a snow map by just looking at the precip and doing a 10-to-1 ratio and making the adjustments in my head for where it's colder and maybe where it's a little warmer. But in terms of trying to, if you're making a decision based on a snow map 5 or 6 days out, that's a fool's errand, and you can get yourself into a lot of trouble that way. Just to let you know.
Yeah, if anybody, on television, for example, shows you a map based upon, let's say, the European run or the GFS run for, Friday night and Saturday, they're doing you more of a disservice as opposed to a service, because what they're showing you is something that could, as you just mentioned, Joe, over 5 or 6 days, over 5 days actually now, will change or flip, or the term I used yesterday, waffle. I mean, let's wait until more data is available to put into the supercomputers, and that's usually within 72 hours of the first flakes falling, which would mean that we might actually start looking at things tomorrow night, or more likely for Wednesday night, before we really get down and dirty, so to speak, in terms of what may happen. Anything from you see anything now, it's crazy.
Yeah, for me, I've always used the 72-hour rule, 72 hours from the start time. So I'm thinking Wednesday night, I'll probably do an early call of some sort, uh, and uh, yeah, I have a lot of trouble beyond 72 hours. I just have a lot of trouble trying to figure out snow amounts. So 72 hours works for me, and then I always make I don't change it, which sometimes is I'm not, that doesn't say I'm not tempted to from time to time, but I almost never change the first call map until I make the final call, which will be on Friday. More than likely on Friday, there'll be a final call for this.
my final call maps usually aren't put out until the day after the storm passes.
Right,
So
which is always wise because they're always right. But you know what?
they're always right.
I know you. You probably make you probably make one spot or two just a little bit off, so you could say, well, I was a little too low here or a little too high there, but everything else was perfect, just to make it look legit.
Well, maybe you make like an A, B, or C, and make the final call. Literally moments before the first snowflakes fall. You say, I'm going to choose the B map. Get rid of the A and the C. But
Right.
uh, yeah, yeah. It'll yeah. At least for all of you out there who are throwing the towel in December and saying winter's over, you see, it's not so boring anymore, is it?
No, it isn't. And by the way, in terms of the long range, it's very interesting. This storm is actually very important from the standpoint of the long range because its track eventually somehow gets it up into Canada, and it kind of rearranges the chess pieces a little bit up in Canada, which delays. We've been mentioning the fact that the longer range models keep trying to bring the trough back into the west and the ridge back into the east as we go into February. But depending on what this storm does, it could delay it for a few days or maybe longer. Ultimately, it may go that way, but it does seem to may want to have some impact or at least have a say in the longer term outcome. Let's go to the radar and take a look at what's going on right now because it's kind of almost a repeat performance of last night, Joe. We had snow showers move across the Northeast. In a few places had the ground whitened up nicely. Tonight, that was a cold front. Tonight, it's a warm front that is moving on through, and you can see it here on the current radar shot. We've got a couple of patches of the green. So you really focus on the greens because that's where the snow is actually reaching the ground. When you look at the blue and the grayer areas, most of that is aloft. So the heavier snow showers seem to be going, just looks like they're over at Binghamton and moving up into the Catskills and going northeast and maybe eventually making their way toward Albany and on up northward into Vermont and New Hampshire. The southern end of this has some radar echoes aloft, and maybe there are a few flurries around, but I'm really not expecting too much other than the odd snow shower that might fall here and there in places to the south across, say, eastern and southeastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Long Island, southern New England. You'll probably be just a little bit too far south for these snow showers tonight.
I think, well, first of all, the ones that we had yesterday or last night uh, put a coating down, a sugar coating, if you will, across my property here in Putnam Valley. And I'm really not expecting much more than that, maybe quite possibly even less than that with the warm frontal snow shower activity that we're seeing during the night. And actually, Joe, I think that whatever we get tonight probably is going to be mainly in the 9 p.m. to midnight time frame. Anything after midnight really would be just, if you pardon the unprofessional meteorological expression, diddly squat. If we get anything out of this beyond, let's say, a coating, it's going to have to come in that 3-hour time frame from about 9 to midnight. Other than that, I don't really see much. And tomorrow, hopefully, to help get rid of a little bit of the snow that fell from last week, I think temperatures will be flirting with 40, and that'll be quite nice, especially if the sun comes out and helps out with the meltdown.
By the way, no big storms around right now. These systems that have been coming through seemingly every 24 to 36 hours have been pretty weak. And if you look at the structure on the radar, you can you see why. You've got the system in the east and trailing back into the Ohio Valley. Then you've got this other system that's down in the Gulf states, and that's moving straight east. So there's two streams here at work in the upper atmosphere, and the south and the north are not getting together here. So that system in the Gulf states is actually going to move pretty much straight east and head off the southeast coast and move out into the open waters of Atlantic with no consequence. We have some snow showers going on and areas of snow in parts of Montana, Idaho, over into Wyoming and even into western Nebraska. Most of what's up here is on the light side. The Weather Service, in terms of their watches and warnings, Really kind of a quiet night across the U.S. There's not a whole lot going on as far as advisories are concerned. We've got a few local winter weather advisories in parts of southwest PA from Altoona south into a small area in northeast West Virginia. A few winter weather advisories in southeastern down east Maine. We've got some in West Kansas into northeastern Colorado. A couple scattered around from Nebraska on up in Montana, and they're doing the dense fog thing on the West Coast in Oregon and Washington, thanks to the ridge position there. No frost or freeze advisories in effect tonight for the state of Florida. We've got wind chill advisories and wind chill warnings up in the upper Midwest and up into parts of the Dakotas because of the very cold air mass that's coming down in that particular region. And you can see that, by the way, on the surface map, as we'll give this a quick refresh here and head over to the latest one, which is the 21Z surface map. By the way, Joe Rayo is monitoring the chat board for us tonight, so if you have any questions or comments or observations, by all means share them on the chat board, and Joe may see them and mention them. And so keep an eye, Mr. Rayo. Keep an eye.
Yes, I am.
Good. There's your cold high. Temperatures in the double digits below zero when you get up into the Dakotas and on up into Canada. So that's another one of these what seems to have been endless cold highs coming down this entire month. Here's our warm front to the south, the cold front that went through last night. The next cold front will be coming through tomorrow night. And Joe, that front comes through with no issues.
I'm just looking here at the chat board per your instructions, and I'm looking at a question from Izzy D to both of us. Why do you think that the storm would be able to make it up the coast if there's a cold front coming through on Friday? Don't the cold fronts usually overwhelm and push everything east and south? Actually, it's not the cold front, Izzy. It's usually a big dome of high pressure that follows immediately behind the cold front. But the cold front, or any kind of frontal system, if it's moving just the right way, could actually serve as the pathway, if you will, for a developing storm or a ripple of low pressure that's developing on it, which if it ripples, let's say, off the mid-Atlantic coast and interacts with the rather warm waters of the Gulf Stream, can very quickly become a very potent storm, which some of the models are suggesting for Friday night and Saturday coming up. And there is high pressure, cold high pressure, that's going to be situated up to the north and northeast, although not in the most perfect position, but still enough so that it's going to supply the cold air for us to see some of the white stuff here, perhaps, again, for Friday night into part of Saturday.
Right, and the structure of the upper air, by the way, matters here. That's why if you get if we were talking about the tilt of that trough, if it's northeast, southwest, then everything gets pushed out to the southeast. That front is probably going to be a little more important and in the equation as it slides eastward. But if you look at the dynamic solutions that were shown earlier, that front actually doesn't make it. It falls apart. It pretty much merges with the air mass that's already here, and then the alleyway is set right up along the southeast coast of the United States and then on up just offshore to our northeast. So that front is only going to be relevant if we wind up with a weaker upper air where the northern part of that trough the northern part of the trough moves faster than the southern part of the trough, in which case the storm gets pushed out to sea. If that trough is north-south and neutral as it gets near the Ohio Valley, then it's a whole different ballgame. And we can illustrate that when we get to the maps. A WPC on their snowfall forecast probabilities here in the Northeast and back over into the Ohio Valley. You can see, at least from the snow showers, I mean, you have to kind of go way up into upstate New York and into northern New England to get into some numbers that are above 50% in terms of probability. And also you can see, that reddish air, that I guess that's pink or salmon or whatever color that is, in western Pennsylvania that extends down from Altoona down into West Virginia. That's that area, that small area that we saw the winter weather advisories from. And as we widen out, you can see the probability of at least 2 extends back into northern Ohio, in and all around the Great Lakes around Michigan. Some of this is lake, a good chunk of this is probably lake effect. And also back into Colorado, there's actually a fairly high probability of at least two in eastern Colorado, where we have the winter weather advisories, and back up into Kansas, and mixed probabilities as you make your way up the terrain through Wyoming and on up into Idaho. And of course, it's very, very quiet on the East Coast. Now, the long range folks at WPC have been a little bit on the busy side, and they issued a forecast today at 16:35. So that was at 11:35 this morning. And I will update this. Let me just get the
And
contours
by the
back
way,
up.
Joe, before one thing, the next time we get Bill Goodman here on
Tomorrow,
Joe and Joe from the National.
it could be tomorrow.
Okay, there's a question I'd like to ask him. And of course, you interned at the National Weather Service many years ago, so maybe you can give a hint about this, is the fact that the National Weather Service forecast offices in Philadelphia, in Albany, and in New York City, actually in Upton, New York, all three were delayed, very much delayed with the evening forecast. Normally the evening forecast is put out 3:30 to 4 o'clock. Tonight, all three Weather Service offices did not get their evening forecast out until between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the evening, about as late as I've ever seen for the evening outlook. And the fact is, it wasn't just New York; it was Philadelphia, and it was also in Albany. So I'm wondering whether or not somehow or other the three forecast offices got together and were hammering or yammering out what might happen later on in the week and how they're going to word this relative to their own forecast area.
Yeah, but I don't think they would have delayed the forecast 3 hours. They would, it sounds more like either a long lunch or an early dinner. Actually, Bill's working the 4 to 12s, so he was on shift tonight, so he'll be able to answer that question pretty
Good.
easily, I think.
Let's love to ask him that. Bill, where
No.
were you at 4 o'clock or 4:30 or 5 o'clock or 5:30, 6 o'clock?
No, wait.
6:32. I think.
Wait a second. Wait a minute. If you do that, please do
Yes.
it. Please do it in your best Perry Mason.
Isn't it true, Mr. Goodman, that you were delayed in that forecast? Isn't it true that you were not doing what you normally do at your
Exactly. Isn't it true that the forecast was sent out at 7 o'clock and not at 4 o'clock on the scheduled time? Isn't it true you were seen climbing up on the radar tower, just swinging around from left to right and right to left?
I know. We have seen in the past forecast offices that have had a problem with the radar or maybe some computer problem in the main office. But I just found it so interesting that not just New York, but also Philadelphia and Albany, all three offices were so late. And,
yeah, I don't know.
I was just.
Yeah, I don't know if there's some kind of connection between the three of them. Sounds like some sort of glitch somewhere in their database.
I remember, on the old Circuit A teletype, sometimes you'd see a message coordination outlook where those three, and sometimes Boston got involved too,
right?
Where they had they apparently got together, and I'm sure that if this holds, that there's the potential for a major storm Friday night, Saturday, then I'm sure that all of those offices are going to have a confab, if you will,
oh yeah,
with each other, saying, what are you guys up there doing? Me? I don't know. Is that, hey, Philadelphia, what are you going? That kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I'm sure
it all works out that way.
Well, I talked to him earlier today, and he said he might be able to do it tomorrow. So if that's the case, and then I'll reach out to Tony Gigi and see if we can get him, and we'll get the four of us on and see if we could figure all this out. WPC updated the forecast. Just so we're clear, the WPC forecasts, when they put them out in terms of the time that they're issued, they lag about one model cycle. So this forecast was actually done off the 0Z run and not the 12Z run. And the 12Z run was much more dynamic than the 0Z run from last night. So they're going off the 0Z run, and then this forecast will probably get updated sometime late this evening. Sometimes they do it like right before midnight. So we're not really going to get anything new here. But from their last forecast from earlier today, they had a 30 to 50% chance, which they added the 30 to 50% chance onto their forecast from Delaware right up the coastal plain and then heading up into New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. The 10 to 30% line, which was just west of the New Jersey-Pennsylvania border, has now been pushed back to central Pennsylvania. So you kind of at least can figure out that they're, where they're going in terms of their mindset. And if you think about it, if you look at off the 12Z runs, this forecast actually matches up with the 12Z runs pretty well. So that's their latest thinking. That's for Friday into Saturday morning, and then Saturday into Sunday morning. They have the 30 to 50% line. Now, again, in terms of the timing of the storm, this will be ending sometime during the day on Saturday. So they've got 30 to 50% from western Long Island, north and east, and they've got a 50 to 70% chance for much of Rhode Island, the eastern half of Massachusetts, virtually all of New Hampshire, and I'm going to guess they have it also for all of Maine. Yep, and they even have a 70 to 90% chance up in northern Maine, which there's a shocker. Okay, it's going to snow up. It's going to snow up in northern Maine. Breaking news, folks. All right, let's go to model time, and I've got the 12Z GFS up, and we'll put the surface up because that's what everybody loves to see. And I think probably, yeah, you know what? I'll stick with the precip rather than switch to the radar. So we've got low pressure that develops in the Gulf of Mexico, and then another low kind of takes over off the North Carolina coast. This is now the map that is valid for Friday evening, 7 o'clock. Now, the snow that you see up in Maine, New York State, Pennsylvania, that's part of that Arctic front that's approaching. But if you look closely, the developing coastal lows, isobars, now go all the way up into southern New York State. I mean, this thing's got a fairly large circulation that extends down into the central Gulf and comes all the way around. But the front effectively here is gone. The northern part of it probably survives, and that's the part that's up here. There's probably something left over from the front up in northeastern New England and moving out or just falling apart. So because of the fact that the upper air is so strong, and if you follow, by the way, these thickness lines, you can kind of see exactly what the upper air looks like. There's your trough in the upper atmosphere. Here's your surface low, and the surface low is going to move along to the northeast. It's very sharp on the GFM, sharp on all the models. And you can see the low passes east of the North Carolina coast by a fair distance, not too far off the coast. Starts to intensify, and then of course it blows up as it goes further northeast on the GFS. Snow everywhere by Saturday morning. Then passes very close to or just northwest of the benchmark actually, and heads on up into just east of Cape Cod, and hammers New England, and then it keeps on going. But look at how what impressed me, Joe, on this, and this has to do with the wavelength of the trough. Look at the circulation of this thing. Okay, I mean, you're talking about, look at that. That cold air is going to get drained down all the way down the eastern seaboard if this were to literally be correct, and we don't know that it is. But cold air is going to drain down the eastern seaboard and change rain to snow in coastal North Carolina, South Carolina again. This is a very cold high that is sitting up in the Dakotas. It's a little bit unusual to see a setup like this because oftentimes the lows are, they're not like tropical systems, obviously, but certainly is much more. They're usually more compact than what you see here. This is a big system. This is a very big system, and it's because of what's going on upstairs, which I'll show you in a second. The low moves away to the northeast, and we say goodbye to it. So now I'm going to bring up the 18Z run, okay, which, as Joe pointed out, was flatter and takes a low further out to the east. Now here on this one, the Arctic front to the north hangs on a little longer. because as we go into Friday evening, you could still actually find it up here. It's weak, but it's still kind of hanging there. This low is not really well developed. The model also leaves behind a lot of the moisture that's there down in the Gulf of Mexico. And again, the trough not as sharp. The low goes further out and then starts to make the turn and heads up to Nova Scotia. So it gets eastern New England to an extent. I don't know how much of that snow that it shows upstate New York and then moving down here on Friday afternoon. I don't know if much of that is real or even reaching the ground. But this would be, something that would pass farther to the east and would probably not produce very much, except for coastal New England, maybe down to eastern Long Island, getting clipped for a little while. But that's about it. Now, why? What's the difference? And the difference is very simple. Let's look at the upper air. And let's look at the trough. Take a look at the trough on Saturday morning. It's dropping down. It's still kind of positively tilted. It goes neutral just about right here. We talked about this yesterday when it had the neutral trough right at the coast. It's further west than it was yesterday, but it's not quite as far west as it was on the earlier run. Okay? And that's the difference, because when this thing finally goes negative and swings up, it's mostly too late except for coastal and south and eastern New England. Now, if we go to the 12Z run, you're going to see a different a slightly different structure. Same trough, but look at where the trough is for the same time frame that I just had. It's much further to the left. It's much further west. It's almost neutral there, western Ohio down to Mississippi. By the way, that trough continues off the map. It goes all the way up into Canada. And here's where it starts to go negative, is when the trough axis is at 80, right in here. So any storm is going to ride that flow right up the coast and ride it up close to the coast. That is the difference. That is the main difference in this. Is it going to look like what you have in front of you here, or what I showed you before? And if we widen this out, Mr. Rayo, you'll see something that I don't think you see very often, because of talking about that long wave connection with this goes all the way up into a low that's up in Labrador. I mean, even north of Labrador, it's in the Davis Strait. I mean, that is quite a trough. Although the strongest part of the trough is obviously down where we are, but I mean, it basically extends from northeastern Canada all the way down into the Caribbean. That's a trough. That is a trough.
That is a long wave trough. And Joe, you mentioned before about how I'm not a big fan of the 6 and 18Z intermediate runs, and usually it's the opposite of what we're looking at right now. Usually we're looking at the primary, the 0 and the 12Z runs, showing a storm that is going to miss us, or showing a storm that doesn't have much influence on our area. And then let's say the 18Z comes out, and all of a sudden that same storm is pushed west, and we are enveloped in blizzard conditions. Everybody gets excited. Oh, look what the 18Z shows. Oh. And I would say, calm down. This is, after all, the 18Z. Now, what we have going here is the reverse of that. We have the primary runs saying that there's a potential for a major storm Friday night and Saturday. And now it's the intermediate runs, the 18Z, that's saying, don't worry about it. It's going out. We're not going to get much, if anything, out of it, blah, 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 blah. So that having been said, if I go by that standpoint, I would say ignore what the 18Z said and go with the primary. And the primary runs are saying we're going to get hit. So maybe this is the time that we are certainly going to get a hit, or we'll see what happens in a few hours on the 0Z runs. And by the way, I wish now all of the runs, the GFS and the European and the UK Met and everything, I wish they all would follow along the lines of the NAM run, which only goes out to 84 hours. And really, if you think about it, that's as far out as anybody should look for any kind of, suggestion of any kind of long range or whatever. No, I mean, we have models going out 10, 15 days, and you know what you could do with those models, or those particular runs. But 84 hours is just about the limit, I think. And so when it starts picking up, when the NAM starts picking up on this for later in the week, that's when I'll start looking with uh, extreme interest, let's
Right.
say.
Well, I'll just say in response to that, we'd have a much shorter show if that was the case. I got the I got the Canadian run up of the upper air and the Canadian model upper air. Now you have a question for Bill, and I also have a question for Bill, and this came up uh, earlier in my mind. And I'm going to make a notation to ask it. Since since the driving force of this entire storm really is about what's going on in Canada with this shortwave, I the logical question in my mind is that is there data that goes into the Canadian run that would lead you to say that it would handle these upper troughs that are coming down from Canada a whole lot better than the GFS would? Maybe their equations are different. Maybe the data that goes in, maybe they have some data that goes into the Canadian that doesn't go into the GFS. I don't know the answer to that question, but I would be curious if this winds up to be a big storm and like the Canadian describes, as to whether it's because of the fact that the Canadian model, because of the origin of this and how it all evolves, that the Canadian model has an advantage when systems that come down from the north up in northern Canada like this versus say the GFS or the European. Because if you look at this, Joe, I mean, here the trough is not only sharper, but it goes neutral near Chicago and then starts to cut off. I mean, the whole upper low closes off into a very strong cutoff low in North Carolina that rides up right along the coast and on up into Maine and beyond. I mean, this is a very very dynamic looking upper air that the Canadian produced. And I'll tell you something, it's not out of the question that this could happen. Given, depending on all the other upstream stuff that's going on, there is room for this. And the Europeans on the same page, by the way. Let's see if they finally got the surface maps up. Yes, they do. So this is the matching surface map, which, by the way, was almost identical, or actually even a shade. I think it was a shade further left than what the overnight run was. But it's got the slow that develops off the southeast coast. This is Friday evening. You can see the snow area to the northwest. And then the low intensifies rapidly east of North Carolina Friday night. By Saturday morning, it's sitting just near Montauk or just southeast of Montauk, depending on my eyesight. It looks like it's southeast of Montauk, and then it's actually sitting in eastern Connecticut on Saturday afternoon. And by the way, if the cutoff were any deeper or any sharper, you'd wind up with a coast hugger here. I just want to put that out there. I don't think it's going to happen, but the coast hugger idea, but I can't rule it out completely if we wind up with a really super sharp cutoff that develops, that you wind up with a low that's tucked in along the coast. And the European, which we only have the 500s, and I got to make sure because I got the 18Z one up here, so it only goes out to 72 hours. It doesn't go out far enough. But the European is kind of on the same page in the upper air with the Canadian, although its surface low is much further to the east. But it's got the upper trough coming down, going almost neutral there west of Chicago, and then forming a cutoff in Virginia, and then lifting on up into Maine and New Brunswick. This would be also a significant snowfall, and it'd probably be all snow for everybody because the low is far enough offshore. That's one other thing I want to bring up here, and this is another reason why you can't forecast snow amounts 5 days out, because there are so many of the dynamics that are really important when it comes to snow and figuring out snow totals are things that you really don't know until you're at the very least, inside 60 hours. So you can look at the temperatures at all the different levels of the atmosphere, particularly on the NAM, because the NAM gives you a lot of numerical data that you can look at from through the low and middle levels, and that's all very important. Also, you don't get a set. A lot of times what happens in these things is you get a lot of what I call do-it-yourself cold air, and then when the a low gets up far enough north, the cold air, which would be, at times might be pinned just north and west of the coast, rapidly collapses offshore, and suddenly, you have some coastal areas that maybe start off as rain, and then you get it just turns into this big wall of white. So, though again, that's inside 60 hours, that data is extremely important, especially in big events. And you're not going to be able to figure it out 5 days out or even 3 days out. You got to get inside that 48 to 60 hour time frame to really get a good handle on snow amounts. That's how I see it.
Well, I mean, if you say that you can't go, much beyond 60 hours, I'm just looking here at the original Old Farmer's Almanac,
Ah,
and
they go up.
wanted to see what they had forecast. This is for the Atlantic corridor. This is Region 2 of the Old Farmer's Almanac, January 27th through the 31st, which I think is the time frame that we're looking at for this storm, and they're calling for rain and snow showers. So if it rains or snows, they win,
They
right?
right. Exactly. All right,
So there you go.
quick look at the long range. First on the European, there's your low in eastern Canada. Of course, I can't see the next map because it's taking forever to move. So there it goes, and it gets swallowed up by an upper low that's up in the northern Davis Strait and Hudson Bay. That trough lifts out. This is at day 8, which is February 1st. So we'll be cold going into that. We get into sort of a flattish ridge position. You can see the troughing in the west, and then there's mostly troughing in the west and just kind of a flattish ridge here in the east because you actually have a 50-50 low out there, which is kind of interesting on the European model. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I'm not. If you're a snow lover, I wouldn't be too upset with an upper air that looks like this because the trough is actually inland of the west coast and not on the west coast, and it looks like some of these pieces are going to want to move eastward. But my view on this is just the fact that again, this storm being important in terms of how strong it gets and where it winds up, because it's going to impact the pattern in the longer term. Now, the GFS is a little bit more aggressive here from the standpoint of the ridge building after this system pulls out. It's got one more. This is our system for the weekend. So after it pulls out, there's like a lagging trough on Monday, and then you got troughing down in the west. It actually pumps up the ridge fairly strongly up into eastern Canada. I don't know if that's real or not. Then you sort of move the chess pieces around a little bit, and we're not seeing, except for that one little push up there for a couple of days. I mean, I wouldn't exactly scream blowtorch over an upper air pattern that looks like this as we get towards, say, February 5th, 6th, and 7th. It's not, it's not terrible. I mean, it's not great for snow lovers and cold weather lovers, but it's not terrible. Uh, and the other thing is that remember, even when the pattern gets less than favorable, and even if you do have a trough in the east a ridge in the east and a trough in the west, you can still wind up with some snow and ice events out of that, depending on how strong the ridge is, how deep the trough is, and what is the timing of any energy that comes out east. Because you will have cold highs that'll be able to move across southern Canada with low-level cold air from west to east. And sometimes if you time it right, you can get some interesting low and mid-level events that could occur, especially during the month of February where climatology is in your favor. So just bear that in mind. And one last thing, because I've been checking this every day, and every day it's been a little bit different. But I like to be looking at the 10 millibar and the stratosphere to see what is going on there, because that's, to me, that's been the big driver this month. That flow
Right.
in the from it, because it's been like, look at this. I mean, it's pretty much straight from Siberia into the plains and across into the eastern states. This is the time frame, and that, by the way, is the time frame at 384 hours. So that's interesting that it has this flow like this in 2 weeks. Because if that's right, it would suggest in my mind that perhaps any break in this pattern that we're in is not something that's going to we'll change it to a new pattern. Maybe it won't last that long. But if you look, looking at this going through this week, you can see that flow from Siberia down into eastern Canada and the eastern part of the United States. The vortex rotates around the North Pole, does this kind of tight counterclockwise loop, sort of wraps up a little tighter, which, if that happens, that probably will allow some ridge building at the low levels. But then again, when we get to the end of the period, Joe, it's back to this. That's not a warm look in the stratosphere here. This goes back to what we've been in for a good part of this month. So, it's been kind of going back and forth on this idea. Some runs have it, then next run it's gone, next run it's back. So, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of volatility here in the long range, and I wouldn't necessarily, make an unequivocal statement that the pattern is going to change to a certain thing and then stay that way for the rest of February and March. I don't think I would do that, based on how the overall pattern has been this month, which I think most people didn't really see happening, including myself when we were in the when it was before Christmas. I didn't, honestly, I didn't envision it getting this way. So uh, there's always in weather surprises that happen and they happen sometimes when you least expect them. So just bear that in mind.
All right. Well, I think that the pattern change, if you will, or the shift to milder temperatures will be, ironically, right around Groundhog Day. And I agree with you. I don't see this, whatever flip we see, I don't think that's going to last for very long. Certainly not a protracted or drawn out situation. 5, 6, 7 weeks. That ain't happening, and it may not happen for much more than a week or two in February, if that long. But I do see that there's going to be a change toward more than just, like, for example, tomorrow we're talking about the possibility of 40 or low 40s across much of the tri-state area. It'd be nice if we had that for several days. We are not. We're going to go right back into the freezer come Wednesday through the end of the week and into the weekend, barring any big storm. But I think that after Groundhog Day, February 2nd, we may actually be able to put or string together more than one 40-degree day. How many? I don't know. If maybe a few, but I think that we're still going to be in flux, so to speak, and we may lean back toward colder conditions, if not mid, maybe even late February. And I know the CPC suggested that for our part of the United States, we would have a milder than normal February. That may be true for a little while, but I don't think for the entire month.
Yeah. There, as I like to put it, there will be windows of opportunity. I think along the way, and they'll probably come in. When they may not show up on the long range. You might see them start to show up maybe in the medium range, but I'm not. I'm not really looking at that longer range pattern for the month of February and thinking that the winter cancel people will be out the minute the temperature breaks above 40. I'm sure they'll be having. I'm sure they'll be doing practice runs tomorrow, but we'll see. So anyway, I couldn't glean anything because it's not far enough out the 18Z European. So I can't, I can't, I don't have any pearls of wisdom from that respect. I do have a question though, Joe, for you. This was left on the comments on YouTube, on the YouTube video from yesterday, and I know you've addressed it before. The subject of the grand solar minimum came up again, and just he was kind of wanting to know your opinions on it. Well, he asked my opinion, and I said I really don't have an opinion on it, but I know Joe has talked about it, so he probably could answer it better than I can.
Well, this all goes back to 1976. Actually, there was a solar scientist, Dr. John Eddy, who was actually trying to disprove something. There was a gentleman by the name of Maunder in the 19th century who claimed that there were no sunspots between 1645 and 1715. Eddy said, "Nah, I don't think that's possible. We have a regular sunspot cycle. Every 11 or 12 years, the spots increase and then they fall off and they increase again. And so John Eddy said, I'm going to look back over the records to disprove what Maunder said. And guess what? He couldn't, because Maunder was right. There was a period from 1645 to 1715 where there was hardly any sunspot activity. Solar activity was very low. And at the same time that that happened, we had a period here in the Northern Hemisphere, which some refer to as the Little Ice Age, where temperatures were very much below normal. And Eddy then said, well, maybe there's a correlation. Maybe when the sun gets unusually inactive or quiet, we have periods of unusually cold weather. About 10 years ago, I had an interview with Dr. Gavin Schmidt, who is the climatologist for NASA and studies Earth and atmospheric science for NASA. His office is based right here in the New York metropolitan area. And I asked him, I said, Dr. Schmidt, is that true? Is it the lack of any solar activity mean that we'll be going into a colder spell of weather and maybe this could counteract global warming? And Dr. Schmidt said, absolutely not. In his opinion, sunspot activity has nothing to do with our climate, or if it does, very, very minuscule influence. He said that during that time frame of the Maunder minimum, the lack of sunspots, that we had an unusual amount of volcanic activity, which put a lot of ash and dust into the atmosphere, large amounts of that, aerosol clouds, which help to reflect the light of the sun back into space and lowered the temperature in that regard. So it's a very controversial issue. There are PhD scientists who believe that the sun does have control over what happens here on the Earth. Others who say it's a lot of hogwash and that is volcanic activity. I just saw something last week, in fact, Joe, where there's now a new explanation for the Little Ice Age, that there was an area of very cold water up near the polar regions that, for whatever reason, got displaced and got pushed southward and then suddenly began to maintain itself for a very long interval of time. And that loaned itself to helping to produce the unusually cold temperatures that were experienced in the 17th and 18th century. So from my personal point of view, I really don't know. In fact, I think I told you that I think that if we have any kind of atmospheric triggering mechanism for an explanation for the what global warming or climate change, I think it would be the perhaps the PDO, the Pacific
Decadal.
decadal oscillation, where the Pacific Ocean warms and cools over a span of 20 to 30, 40 years. And we don't know. Scientists and climatologists, they really can't explain why this happens in the Pacific Ocean, why it warms over a long period of time and then cools over a long period of time. And I think that may have a say in what's going on now. I think the cycle flipped around 1990 or so, and that has led to the unusual span of unusually warm weather or climate that we've seen over the last 30 years or so. And if it does flip, as it ultimately does, we may see a flip maybe in the next 10 years. And who knows if that happens? And if there is anything to this, then maybe, just maybe, we might actually see cooling temperatures here in the Northern Hemisphere in the middle part of this century, the 2030s, the 40s, the 50s, perhaps due to the PDO flipping. But I don't know.
Well,
Did I
no,
kill 5 minutes here?
no, which is fine. The chairman hit super chat as he's done with his COVID runs, and he's on the board tonight. Portland, Maine, by the way, 17.5 inches. Atlantic for the season. Atlantic City, 17.2. Talk about it. Talk about upside down. I'm going to throw this into the equation. So we know about the Little Ice Age. We know about the unusual cold weather that was in Europe sometime in the early 1800s when Charles Dickens wrote his stories and all the snow that was around at Christmas time and all the rest of it. So a lot of people bring this sort of stuff up. But what I want to know is, what was the weather like in other places? Because, I mean, logic would dictate to me that in terms of the upper air structure, that it couldn't have possibly been cold everywhere around the world. So if there was a little ice age going on someplace, was there a massive area of much above normal temperatures going on someplace else? Because usually when you have a very deep trough someplace where it's very cold, you got a very warm ridge someplace else where it's very warm. So I would like to see something that fills in the missing data about what the weather was hemispherically and maybe around the world, because only that way I think it makes any kind of sense. Because you can't look at the grand, something like saying, okay, the grand solar minimum is coming, which means that the next 20 or 30 years or whatever it is, uh, we're going to have these cold winters. Well, that response is coming from someone who lives in a certain geographic area. So what happens to the people out in the West, for example? If you're talking about that it's going to be cold in the East, you can't really do that unless it's cold it's warm in the West, because you got to have a ridge somewhere. Unless you have some incredible, totally anomalous upper low that just comes crashing down and covers all of North America from coast to coast. I think I saw that maybe once in the last 45 or 50 years, in the early 80s, when the polar vortex, basically had a 480 low that dropped down in northern Texas, and the whole country
Yeah.
was frozen. But that sort of thing hardly ever happens. So that's my question. Put it on a map. And the only other question I had was Dr. Schmidt's first name Zachary, and did he go back to the Jupiter 2 after your
No,
interview was over? Just
no, it was
checking.
Gavin. It was Gavin. It
Gavin?
was
Okay.
Gavin, not
So it
not
wasn't
Zachary.
it
It
wasn't
would have been a
Dr.
heck of.
Wasn't
It would have been
Dr.
funny if it
Zachary
was
Schmidt.
Zachary.
Yes,
No,
exactly.
no,
All right.
no.
So
But but the thing is, Joe. Um, there was a paper written by a Russian scientist named Zarkova in 2015, and he looked at the last three solar cycles, and the last three solar cycles, each time the peak of the sunspot activity was to occur, it was lower down as opposed to the previous cycle. And so what he simply did was he simply by extrapolation said, look how it's going down each time we come to a new peak of a solar cycle. And he simply extrapolated and said, solar cycle 26, we're in solar cycle 25 right now. Solar cycle 26 is going to come down to very low levels, and that will be the end of the modern solar maxima. That after that, which would be the mid 2030s, that we would go into a protracted spell of unusually cold weather because there will be a lack of any sunspots. That's all well and good, except for one problem. I don't know if Dr. Zarkova is watching tonight, but he knows already what I'm about to say. The fact is that this current sunspot cycle, cycle 25, has already, the peak is expected in 2025, by the way, it is already far more active than the previous three cycles. I mean, that doesn't work into what Dr. Zarkova was saying. He was saying that this would be an even lower amount of sunspot activity compared to the previous cycles. It's not happening, Dr. Zarkova. This sunspot cycle is quite active, and in fact is showing signs that it could be one of the more active sunspot cycles in the next 2 or 3 years. That kills Dr. Zarkova's whole theory about colder weather coming our way due to sunspots, because instead of continuing to go down, 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 this sunspot cycle, for whatever reason, is going up, up, up. And if that happens, that kills the whole theory that each sunspot cycle is progressively lower, and that it's going to flatten out, and we're not going to see anything, and cold weather is going to prevail in the middle part of this century.
by the way,
It, it does look like that.
we have a sun angle person on who said Margarita Floriatoa. I hope I pronounced that right. Even if the storm does form and reach us, which is unlikely, the sun angle will be the biggest problem and will cause rain and sleet in much of the Northeast. It's time to throw in the towel. If that's not the trolliest thing you could possibly, you are trolling. You're an idiot. Either you're an idiot or you're trolling. I'm sorry. I have to say that. It's January 24th. For God's sake, I'm down at 35. I'm down at 34 degrees north latitude, okay, where I'm sitting right now, and I snow and stick in the daytime here at 2,200 feet up. So please spare me the sun. Oh my God, it's January 24th and the sun, and in all of the Northeast, are you really up in central and northern New England, the sun angle this time of year is going to cause, really, just stop, just stop. All right,
It
no,
really
no
the sun
serious,
the
no serious person, and particularly because since it's going to snow Friday night, so the sun angle is going to do that on Friday night. Very nice. The moon angle and the street light angle maybe, but on Friday night, yeah. All right, that's lovely. I love the people on the
it's
chat board
not
very
the
much, but every once in a while somebody shows up that says, that gets the Smata Mata award. Okay.
what happened to Mr. Reuben Fairchild?
Oh, he's disappeared completely. He's disappeared completely off the face of the earth. I think because he's not executive producing the show and forcing us to do things 7 days a week, even on our time off. It was just too much for him. I'm not. I really don't know what happened to him, but he's gone. Leon Probitsky
In
hitting
regard
super
to the
chat, by the way, hitting the tip jar. Thank you, Leon. Most appreciated as always, sir.
in regard to the sun angle, I mean, first of all, from the time of the winter solstice until the midpoint of winter, which will be next week on February the 3rd. That's the midpoint. From from the solstice to the midpoint, the amount of minutes that we add on to the each day, it's increasing, but it's not really increasing all that much. And the sun angle really is also increasing, but it's not increasing all that much. You have to wait until the second half of the winter season, and then you start to notice that the days are indeed getting longer. That the amount of daylight we're getting is increasing much more rapidly than in the first half, and that the sun angle is starting to climb. And by the time we get to maybe March, mid March or late March, even though snow certainly is still a possibility, then maybe the sun angle is going to start playing a role in this. But this is crazy. I mean, as you just said, Joe, we're still in January, for God's sake.
God, I
And
mean, really.
sun angle,
And even when you, Joey, and you know it, even when you have the sun angle, even we talked about this. I always feel idiot. I always feel like a moron just even constantly bringing this up. Um, but even when you do have the sun angle issues, intensity trumps everything. Okay. Otherwise, it would never. Otherwise, your argument is your argument doesn't have a leg to stand on because there wouldn't be records of heavy snowfalls in late February and March and even into early April if the sun angle were the reason to prevent it because there are plenty of double-digit snowstorms that we've had in that time period. So this genius now says when models start taking sun angle into account, they will become 10 times more accurate. Oh, go away. Really, just go away. I have to tell you that this rant, by the way, just so you know, has been very therapeutic for me. All right, I'm enjoying it. All
okay,
right, but really, stop.
all right.
You're not a serious person if you're on this board and on this show and you're writing crap like that on the chat board. You're just not. Okay, let's do something more important. The risk for an East Coast storm Friday night, Saturday is growing. Who gets the most snow if such a storm were to materialize? This is our poll for tonight. New York City continues to have a short lead over Boston, Joe, 36 to 33. Hartford in third at 21, and Scranton. Well, if you want, Scranton would win this if we get a coast hugger. That's why I put it in there. And Boston will win if it's more of an Eastern New England storm, and then you have to see what you can split the difference between New York City and Hartford. But Scranton at 11% at the moment.
And I'm just getting the Briller Jeopardy question ready here
Please
because
do.
I know it's my turn tonight to provide the questions here. This is a Briller Jeopardy question for you, Joe, that has been suggested by Dennis Cassia and JQ, Johnny Quest. And
Okay.
I don't know, according to the chairman, he says, I don't know if you are a fan of this show, but several members of chat board could possibly help you out. The category is television, the TV show Emergency. Did you ever watch that show, Joe? Emergency?
I'm thinking, was it Kent,
That that
Kent McCord and I don't I rem- and
no, I think you're thinking
Martin
about
Milner? That was Adam 12.
That's Adam
No,
12.
I know
That's Adam
absolutely
12.
nothing. Zero. Goose egg. Nada. Nada about emergency. So that this is not going to work. I'm going to, I don't have a clue. I don't think I ever saw an episode of the show. So no, I'll get them all wrong.
The,
Every
well,
question,
let's
Joe.
try.
All right, let's try a couple and see where this goes. But every question,
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm not going to know anything about this.
When Emergency first aired, and this is back in 1972, I was all of 16 years old, and you're a couple of years younger than I am. How many how many paramedics were actually working in LA County within 7? And we want to thank Dennis Cassia. I want to thank Dennis.
I'm sorry.
For this one.
What was the? How many? What?
When Emergency first aired in 1972, I know why Dennis suggested this question, this category, because Dennis is a firefighter and works very closely with paramedics, I'm sure. How many paramedics were actually working in Los Angeles County in 1972 when Emergency first aired?
I have no idea. It's either a really ridiculous, even it's a high number, which I'm sure it is today, or maybe it was a very low number. So I'll say 50.
12.
I was going to go even lower, but I figured it was a low number, but I didn't know it was that low. Okay, 12. 50 is a very low number too.
All right. Question number 2. In the episode Saddled, what F Troop star plays a restaurant owner?
I don't know. DeForest Kelly?
I'll give you.
I have no idea.
I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. Maybe this will help.
Ken Berry?
Were you a Ken Berry? No. Were you a fan of All in the Family?
I watched the show, but I didn't watch every episode 100 times.
All right. Well, this is the only, because in one episode, this particular actor appears when Archie gets upset about the fact that he's just turning 50 years old, and this guy says you got to stay young. Anyway, the guy who they're referring to or referencing is Larry Storch.
Okay.
Dennis said, "Give it up."
What?
Dennis said, "Give it up."
Dennis says, "Give it up."
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Renata. It's not go.
Should we continue with this or?
All right, one more question, just to prove to you that
right.
if I can't get 3, I'm going to get 10 wrong. One more.
Well, let me look at the chat board here, and see what maybe somebody on the chat board knows the answer to these things. What were the names of the first 2 dog mascots on Emergency?
Go away. Can we stop now? Really? You should have made the punishment for me. You should have made the punishment that if I got one wrong, I would be stretched at the rack, burned at the stake, and beheaded.
The 2 dog mascots were Boot and Henry.
Yeah, okay. I was just about to say that. All right.
All right. I'm going to go through the rest of these questions and give you the answers. What kind of breed of dog was Henry?
Bulldog.
Henry was a basset hound.
Okay.
No, but not a bulldog. At the end of the series, who turned down the chance to be a real fireman?
At the end of the series?
At the end of the series, who turned down the chance to be a real fireman?
I don't know. Baryshnikov.
Randolph Mantooth.
All right. Yeah, okay.
These are easy, Joe.
Simple.
How many seasons did the original series Emergency run? How many seasons did Emergency run for?
8.
6. What life-saving method was popularized on the show?
Mouth to mouth.
No, CPR.
Okay. Next.
How about number 8? What night and network did Emergency appear on?
NBC. That I know. I'm going to say 8. It was 8 o'clock Thursday nights.
I think it was 8 o'clock, and it was NBC, but it was Saturday night, not
Okay.
Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, what was the name of the nurse at the hospital?
The nurse at the
Played by
hospital.
Julie London.
Um,
The actress was Julie London. What was her name on the show?
I don't
I'll
know.
give you a hint. It's a very popular paper cup.
Dixie.
Good. I give you half credit.
It was either that or Solo. By the way, why was Bill?
Dixie
Hold on,
McCall.
Paul. I'm just wondering why I don't see it. Why was Bill timed out for 300 seconds for saying CPR? I'm just wondering. Oh, there's a bunch of. All right, never mind. I see. There's a conversation that went on before that. I didn't see it. I don't want to see it. Go ahead.
All right. There was an animated spin-off of Emergency. What was it called? I don't know.
No.
I don't even know this question.
I don't know.
Emergency +4, and the bonus was, what was the name of the piece of equipment Roy and Johnny used to communicate with the hospital? Was it A, a biophone, B, citizen band radio, C, Facebook, or D, a cell phone?
I'll say a CB.
No, biophone.
Biophone.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
I don't even know what a biophone is. Okay.
Neither do I.
Neither do I. Okay. Well,
But
that really, that just shook him up tonight. Okay. Why don't we pick a PBS show next time, like a Masterpiece Theater, because God knows I watch that all the time. Anyway,
yeah.
I do occasionally watch it. By the way, I don't know if any of you out there are fans of Ozark, but I'm on season 4. I went through the first 2 episodes. If you've never seen it, it's a great show, but just bear in mind that there is not a single redeeming character in this show. It's the last season now, so if you binge watch it, you only got 3 seasons to get to the 4th one. But there isn't a single redeeming character in the show. And when you're done watching it, you either have to take a shower to wash all the grime off yourself, or in the first 2 the first 2 episodes were so devious and so evil that I basically had to have myself fumigated. That's just, I love it. So anyway, if you're a fan of Ozark, I'm on the same page with you. It's a terrific show. Oh God. Anyway, okay, so you know what? We're not going to live stream the NAM. We're not going to live stream the new GFS because I have no intention of staying up till 11:30, and I don't even want to live stream the NAM. Let's see. Oh, she's still at it with the, now she's complaining about we're a tyrannical chat board. No, it's not a tyrannical chat board at all. The only thing I ask everybody to respect the fact that politics are not to be discussed while the show is on the air. That for me, that is the only issue that I usually have. But you know what? If you're going to come on and say silly things, because that really what you're saying is just silly. It's silly. It's dumb. All right. It's not only wrong, it's dumb. So if you're going to do that, you're obviously doing it to get attention. So if you're going to down here and be a troll and waste people's time, really don't just go someplace else and do it. Okay. There are other channels that would love to have you. If you want to come here and learn about weather and be part of, have a lot of fun, because we do have fun here, and have a and learn some things, and we all learn from each other. People put up things on the chat board that I didn't know, and and vice versa. I say things that people on the chat board don't know. We love to have you if you're going to be here. But if you're going to be here and you're going to just get on the board and just say silly stuff, really. You're wasting our time, and you're wasting your time. You should go elsewhere. Okay. Anyhow, Joe, we had over.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the 225 likes that we had tonight.
Yes, and we went over 500.
I was just going to say that, but I'm glad you said it first.
Yes, we went over 500. So once again, pinned on the chat board, at the top of the chat board, is the link to the meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, which is absolutely free. Download it. And if you're a snow weenie, you'll love it, because you won't have to sit there on your phone and call up every single National Weather Service office up and down the East Coast to get their snow maps and spend hours doing it. You can just go on the home page of my weather app, scroll down past my weather update, and I have every single map from Maine to Georgia uh, there, and even some of the ice maps from the National Weather Service offices, and those maps will automatically update when the Weather Service automatically updates their forecast. And again, free on Google Play, free on the App Store. Just search my name or search meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and it should come up for you. Or if you go to the link, the Google Play and Apple links are both there, and it'll take you right to where you need to be. So that's it. Okay.
And remember, free is great.
Yeah, because it doesn't cost you anything.
I did that just for you, Joe.
Thank you so much. What was that?
I just moved my camera
up
close to emphasize the point.
Gotcha.
That's my shutter. That's my shutter. Maybe I should just close my shutter and say goodnight.
All right. Well, you know what? We're going to say goodnight anyway. So everybody have a great night. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 7:30. Thank you for all the super chat hits and for the 500 people that were here. Wonderful to see. We always like a big crowd. Love you guys on the chat board for the most part. Okay. And see you tomorrow at 7:30. Night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.